But to do big things, yes, yes, I've always felt, and even to this day, I feel as though I haven't reached my potential to this day. And I push myself to stay engaged and to do things and to go to a different level. So I don't think I'm finished yet.
I believe that.
And even the things I've accomplished, having come from a meager poverty type environment, being a teacher in a big district, having been a teacher in Los Angeles, those things didn't seem big to me. I felt like I should have done more, and I still believe I should have done more. Should have made some different choices, but didn't. And then some things I pursued, what I did perceive to be bigger, greater, grander, didn't work out. You know, they just didn't happen. So when they didn't happen, you do something else. And other people look at it that I've achieved a lot. But to me, you know, I could have done so much more, should have done so much more.
This is probably everybody has those kinds of regrets about themselves. I bet you know Obama does. Should could have been more than president.
Then president could have. Yes, absolutely. But I know my mother particularly. My father was a quiet man and didn't say much, but his support was always there. You know, as an example, we only had the one car in the family, so going to piano lessons, he would come to pick me up from piano lessons. Playing piano for Sunday school, he would take me to church, you know, for Sunday school, because my mother went to the 11 o'clock service. So, but he would make sure I was there for Sunday school. You know, his support was there in other ways. And when we integrated, he didn't want me to have to walk by myself, you know, when it was only 5 of us. And then when it was 3 of us, to walk from our side of the town, had to cross the track, go through downtown Mineola to the white school. So he would change his work shift so he could take me to school in the morning, and then I could walk home with a group of kids in the evening. So in his quiet ways, his support was there. But my mother was the vocal one. You know, Glenn, I want you to be the very best you can be. You're going to do great things. You're special, you know, just throughout. I want you to get an education so you can take care of yourself and, you know, live a good life.
She's so proud.
Yes, absolutely. And everything I did, she was proud of, no matter what it was. You know, she was proud of it. Yes, and expressed that.
I want to ask you a couple more things about some broader global things before, and I think we will definitely want to see if we can follow up. You were in Mineola during a couple of pretty significant events that I'd like to ask about. For example, where were you when you heard about JFK's assassination?
I was in an English class at the black school. In this English class, and it was a lady across the street. You know, we didn't have air conditioning, so the windows were raised, you know, for circulation and whatever. And there was a lady across the street who just came out on her porch and started yelling, "The president's been shot! The president's been shot!" And you know, we're in class, and to hear that, you know, everybody ran to the window, raised the window, and when she saw people listening, she just kept screaming it over and over. "The president's been shot! The president's been shot!" We didn't have TVs in the school. However, when I went to the white school, they had TVs over there. But we didn't have them, you know, so it was like, oh my God, is she telling the truth? You know, is this true? And then the principal went someplace, and then he announced that indeed that had occurred. But I was in an English class with Mrs. Johnny Bendy. Never forget it.
What was your reaction? What was the reaction of the children around you once you guys discovered that it was real?
It was kind of like in shock. Oh my God, who would have the audacity to kill a president? You know, just couldn't fathom it.
And
why?
Right here, right in Dallas.
Right in Dallas, yes. Mm-hmm. But why? Why would somebody do that? He was such a nice man. Mm-hmm. I think at the time he was shot, I might have been 8th or 9th grade. So a lot of the political ramifications didn't come to me. I was coming from a humanitarian standpoint. Why would they do this? Because black people liked him. Everything was black and white. Because he was advocating integration and everything that was going on during those times of the mid-60s. That's why they killed him. They don't want blacks to progress. They don't want us. It wasn't blacks. They don't want us. Them against us. They don't want us to move forward. And
you were in high school in your senior year when Martin Luther King was assassinated. You were at the white school.
Yes.
What do you remember about that day?
I remember it wasn't like President Kennedy being assassinated, and maybe because we were integrated, we didn't feel we could show our emotions because of the setting. At the black school, we could, everybody felt the same, but here you didn't know how people felt. And in fact, I remember hearing a boy, whether he meant it or not, saying, "Good for the coon." Good for him. Somebody got the coon. And it was like, oh my God. So with that situation, I didn't want to say or do anything that would cause a riot. And in most of the classes, there were only 1 or 2 of us in a class. 2 or 3, depending on which class it was. So you always knew you were outnumbered. And a lot of times that translated even into your values. You felt like these are your values, but their values are different. And so you were just always on guard and not at liberty, because we had to assimilate. We had to assimilate into the white culture. And, we had to give up things, that we believed in. And when I say we believed in, as an example, the proms and the being officers in the clubs, we were never nominated to be officers, the president's secretaries. So we had to give up all of that when we assimilated into the white school. They knew each other. They didn't know our names. And again, when it came to nominating people for officers, class officers, that kind of thing, I was always justifying, well, they don't know our names, because these nominations would take place at the beginning of the school year. We haven't been here long enough for them to know us, so how can they nominate Glenda McKissic when they don't know my name? But they grew up with each other.
It occurs to me, given your interests and your desire to organize and how much of a sacrifice you made going to that, being so early, such an early adopter, going to this all-white school, knowing probably going in that though you had been very likely en route for something like a prom queen position, that was not going to be something you'd get at the white school. Did that cause you pause, or or were those things that you weren't obsessed about these things, I'm sure, but yeah. No,
because I figured it was for a greater cause. What I sacrifice is nothing to open the doors for everybody else or to pave the way for everybody else to come. To get this barrier thing out of the way, so when everybody else comes over, we won't have to go through riots, won't have to go through being on TV for Mineola High School and the blacks and the whites not getting along. I was more or less like an ambassador, because the things I was telling the black kids, well, no, they're not like that. They're really nice, and the teachers are fair, and you just have to study now. You have to do your homework, and you have to do this, that, and the other. But I didn't get a lot of the negative. So I didn't have that negativism to feed into the black kids before they came over there. And when they got there, I was like the ambassador. The white kids knew me then and could say, well, Glenda's okay. So I was the ambassador between the two. And the white kids even would come to me and say, well, such and such said this. What is her personality like? Oh, well, she probably meant this, that, or the other, trying to keep the peace.
Yeah, really, ambassador.
Yeah, so, and I never thought of it as an ambassador until right now. But, yes, no, I considered what I had to sacrifice was nothing. It was just what you had to do. Not necessarily me, but it had to be done. And somebody had to do it, and if I was chosen to be one of those, then go and do the best you can do.
That's beautiful.
I had a quick question.
Yes.
No,
good. I was turning for some burning questions later.
And you have questions too?
Ask your question.
My quick question is, what was it like going from Texas to California and then coming back 9 years later? And was there much of a change in North Texas after the 9 years of being in California?
No. No change in Texas at all to me. I changed, but Texas had not changed. In fact, I've always traveled. I've been exposed to being out of Texas. At the age of 12, when my sister married and went to Sioux City, I went there to babysit during the summer. From Sioux City, my sister moved to California. Every summer, I went to California to babysit. So I was getting exposure, and I worked as a teenager out there on a teenage summer program. So I was being exposed to different people, different thinking.
Was it LA the whole
Los
time?
Angeles,
Okay.
Los Angeles. So from those experiences, even at 12 years old, when I went to Sioux City, I was exposed to things there. In fact, going into restaurants. In Mineola, I had never gone into the front door of a restaurant. We always had to go to the back door, get our food, leave. When I went to Sioux City at 12 and was with some young ladies, we went in the front door of a Walgreens, sat at the counter. Can you imagine? I'm sitting at the counter with these white people all around and getting served my hamburger and Coke just like everybody else, and sitting at tables, because whenever we went places, we would stop and have lunch, going to the swimming pool and going to a swimming pool, integrated swimming pool in Sioux City, Iowa. Those kinds of things. So I got that exposure, whereas most of my friends did not. So when I would come home from just the summer, it was like, it's another world out there. I'm telling my friends, I got to do this. It is another world outside of Mineola, Tyler, East Texas area. There's a big world out there where people are not like they are here. And so the transition going to Los Angeles, I've always felt no matter where I am, I can be with the best of people, no matter who, no matter what color. I can just, whatever you can do, I can do it better, just as well. So I've always done well in those settings. And then when I go home and see people not doing things to their potential, it's like you just don't know. You just don't know. In California, they're doing this. And you can imagine when I went to Los Angeles, the big world that was. But I've never been one to be fazed by it. It's okay, see how things are done, get in there and do it, So the transition for me wasn't like, oh my God. But when I would come back to Texas, then I could see things I had taken for granted. I could definitely see racism and prejudice, in the attitudes and actions of people. Whereas prior to that, it's just the way things are. That's just the way people are. That's just the way it is. But going, being treated differently in Sioux City and Los Angeles and coming back to that, yes, it got to where, I don't want a hamburger if I have to go to the back door, I don't need a hamburger that badly. Go to the little cafe in the community and get my hamburger, where I'm treated as an equal. But I did see the differences in the black side of town, the white side of town, or the black side of town in comparison to the bigger world. There are a lot of injustices. And whether they weren't imposed, but it's like we can do better. We can do better for ourselves. We don't have to wait for other people to do it. Let us do it. Let us maintain our lawns or paint our houses. We don't have to be like this. And people weren't doing it. It's like, well, why? They're doing it everywhere else. But lack of exposure, perhaps. And I know income had a lot to do with it. Buy paint or you buy groceries. Buy a lawnmower to do your lawn, or you buy clothes for your kid. I understand that. But then it was still like we could still do better, because it was just always instilled in me to do better.
I had a question. When we had Gwen Law here in February, she said something about how before desegregation, it was the village attitude where everyone kind of looked out for each other because you had to. As an educator and an administrator in Los Angeles and Dallas, you've seen that transition occur in the black community where there is no longer that village mentality, especially when you're talking inner city school districts and stuff. Can you talk about the transitions that you've seen and the impact that you think that they're going to have on the future of the black community?
Okay, going to Los Angeles. The school I worked in, the first school was a white school out in San Pedro. I'll never forget it. I was the only black teacher there. It seems like I'm always the only in some setting or the other, and that has been throughout my life. But I figure that's just the way my life is supposed to be. But after that first semester, it was as though these kids have everything. The school, the type, as I said, I taught business. So they had rooms of typewriters for the students. And when I was interviewing for a position in Los Angeles, kids would have to share. One would type and the other one sit on the side, have to share. And it was like, but the position I got was in San Pedro. But when I was out there, it was like, I don't want to teach out here. These kids have everything. I want to teach the inner city kids to pass some values, to pass what I've learned on to them. So my next assignment was inner city. And that particular school was a community school, a neighborhood school. I think I was about 23 when I got that position. So I felt that sense of community, even though it was in Los Angeles. That sense of community was there, and I was young enough to go and knock on doors of my students. Okay, you live here, I'm going to your home. I'll be at your house this evening when you get home. So I did things like that, and that just drew the parents more into the school. And I remember an older teacher telling me, she said, I admire your fortitude. And then I'm thinking, well, what is she talking about? But because I was young and doing things, after you've been a teacher a while, you just kind of get, okay, I'm not going to go that extra mile. But as a young teacher and wanting to help these kids, it was like these kids were my sisters and brothers. And so I started doing things, and I felt that sense of community at that school, and I was there 6 years. And of course did a lot of things in that school. First, the social thing, because they didn't have things as well. But then when I became an administrator in Los Angeles. But when I came back to Dallas, it was the same thing. I was assigned to go to Bryan Adams, which was a white school, Bryan Adams High School, and they had, that particular year, they had just started busing black kids in. And the same thing, busing them from South Dallas. And I felt that same sense of, I've got to gather these kids and draw them unto me and do for them what has been done for me. Then I was assigned to a black school, and I felt that sense of community in the black school. But today, that sense of community is not there, because I still go into schools because I do consulting and work with first-year teachers. As I go into the schools and talk to the teachers I'm working with and the parents there, because I get that opportunity, that sense of community in our black community is not there, and that is devastating for us. It's as though we are a ship, not even a ship, we're a boat in the big ocean, and there are a lot of boats out there, but everybody's in their own little boat with no connection. You know, I'm just going to worry about my one boat, and I see what's happening over there, but that's not my business. And I see the devastating effect on our kids, on our black kids. And I think that's one reason sagging has been allowed to take place. Because in our typical, it takes the whole village, that would not happen. But okay, that parent doesn't want me saying anything to her kid. And I had that experience at my family reunion some years back. I had this cousin whose daughter was 11 years old. And we had the family reunion. The teenagers had decided, well, on this particular night, we're going to have a dance, but you have to be 13 to get in. I think then our kids may have gone to age 16 or 17, but you got to be a teenager. And then there were other activities for the 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds. This cousin of mine, little girl, wanted to go to the teenage party. And she was threatening to pick up a brick and hit one of her cousins if they didn't let her in, you know? And so the kids came and got me. I went over and I asked her what was going on. Well, they won't let me in the party. I said, but you're not 13. And it's been known that you needed to be 13 to go to this party. We have other activities for your age group. She and her brother, who was 9, they wanted to go to the big party. And I said, well, you can't go in, and this is your cousin. You shouldn't be talking about picking up a brick, hitting him on the head if he didn't let you in. She goes and tells her mother, my first cousin, that I wouldn't let her in the party. The mother comes to me, you don't say anything to my kids. Those are mine, and blah, 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 blah. You know, now that blew me away. It's like, wait a minute, you know she can't go over there where you tell me what she's doing. These are my kids. You don't put your hand on them and blah, blah, blah. Now that hurt.